because if I don't, the only recourse I have is legal at that point in time. An eye for an eye doesn't work in our legal system. So a temporal limit is not one. Like I understand time isn't timey-wimey. I'm not a time lord, and I don't have a TARDIS. So I think temporal time does matter. And I also don't need to be catching strays, pun intended, about whether or not I'm going to empty a mag whenever someone is approaching me. Again, I'm going to do everything I can to survive that situation, whatever that cost is. And you're right. If I'm double tapping zombies and trying to conserve bullets like I'm in The Walking Dead, I will certainly be doing that and making sure that I do a good bullet count. In other scenarios in which I'm utilizing my gun for realsies, I'm going to reserve the right to utilize excessive use of bullets at that point in time.
Yeah, I don't understand your argument because it's missing principal differences and talking about situations that we've already gone over and explained. First of all, the sexual assault, right, is not the same. Yeah. The sexual assault's not is not necessarily the same, though it can be, as a credible threat to violence. It depends on what you mean by sexual assault. Because obviously being groped on a subway.
Violent or volatile assaults. There's nothing consent. There's nothing consensual. There's nothing about that.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's fine, right? Like then you're talking about the same thing. It's a 1-to-1 thing. It's someone threatening the life of another person. And so I've already.
Months ago.
Right. We've already answered that question. I don't know. Maybe you weren't here for it or you were missing something, right? Like, which is there's a difference in behavior, right? Where we went over that portion, I already answered that question, and you're bringing it back. So, do you need me to answer for you again?
Yeah. So, there's all different kinds of cops. I think 30% of cops are the coolest people I've ever met, who are absolute heroes. I think 30 of them are normies who fuck up, and I think 30 of them are shitbags, which I think is that's for most jobs. But I think maybe I was, because
did you just pull a nerdy Asian math joke?
Yeah, I did. I want to know what's the other 10%.
So maybe
he messed up on his math.
Don't you mean 33.333 repeating counterpoints?
Yes. So the 10%.
Of course, Leroy Jenkins.
The other 10% of the women.
There were women cops, and they were really good at what they did because they were able to talk people down through emotional intelligence. But then also with me, I would like to say I was a hippie cop. So I was a stoner in high school. I did the military first, so I did a lot of really intense shit before I did law enforcement. So I didn't at least early in my career, I didn't let intense situations try to me over and make me treat people like shit just because we're in an intense situation. But there was only 2 of us on the force, and there was 20 cops on the road. So there were only 2. There was 2 hippie cops out of 20 cops on the road, which actually works out to 10%. So that works.
And this is a topic provided by our friend Bam. So shout out to Bam for always being a real one, helping us out. Topic 1. A woman and her teenage son were recently charged with murder after killing a man who assaulted her. The boy fired shots after his mother was repeatedly punched in the face. Police are constantly stating that they fear for their lives when faced with much less. So shouldn't this boy be innocent of this charge as well? It's just like it sounds. It was like a hot dog stand or something. I don't know, some sort of food establishment. And there's video of this of at least the first half. I don't know if the second half has ever been released, but of this man getting an altercation with this woman, and wanting her to apparently leave the establishment. She doesn't, and then he just begins wailing on her. Right. Then her 14-year-old son produces a gun and shoots him. There's lots of the details that happens, that goes along with this, but the guy dies. Then they were, at least the son was charged with murder. I forget what the lady was charged with. I think it might be. Go ahead.
They're dropped.
Yeah. And apparently the charges have been dropped since after I wrote all this.
Today.
Yeah. But still, I want to talk about the principle of the matter. When you are defending someone, when I think it's it might be reasonable to say that their life is in danger. Like, why shouldn't private citizens be able to use force like this? So let's start with our friend Lactoid for introduction, opening statements here, and we'll go around. Lactoid?
Yeah, so I'm going to read a little bit more as to why they were dropped, because in the initial Twitter video, from what I saw, it appears justified in the sense of you have somebody who's throwing haymakers against somebody else, using firearm to defend that person is perfectly justified. But the article states that following this, the guy ran out of the restaurant and was running down the street when the 14-year-old walked out and started shooting down after the guy when he's running away. All right. So already at that point, we have a problem. Okay. Because if guy's running away and he's getting shot at in the back, that major issue with that, that should carry something. That should carry some kind of charge if that happened. The other thing that's alleged in the article is that apparently following this, the mother told the 14-year-old to shoot the witness, one of the witnesses that was standing there. And then they both jumped from the car and fled. Okay. So the actual in the video, the events in the video don't bother me as much as apparently what is alleged to have happened after the video. If it's true that he was shooting after the guy running away and that the mother was directing the 14-year-old to shoot witnesses, they should both go to prison. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much. Scott, please.
So I'm going to steelman the opposition here and add an additional detail, which is that after they fled the scene, they did not turn themselves into police until police were looking for them specifically as suspects. So the incident occurred on the 18th. They turned themselves in on the 24th, I believe. So six days later, or was it the 25th, which is today? So steel manning all of that together, I think it's perfectly justified self-defense. I don't care. And the reason I think it's perfectly justified self-defense is that if someone puts your life in danger or your mother's life in danger, and if you see the video, like, it's not like he's trying to grab her and like throw her out the store. Like, he has decided, I'm gonna kill this bitch, right? Like, he is waylaying on her face while her head is in a corner, right? Where she can't even move her head backwards. Which is likely, like, if without the firearm, that would have been an attempted murder charge, probably, the way he was hitting her repeatedly. So I think it's perfectly justified to shoot this person. I also think it's perfectly justified to shoot someone that's running away from you. I don't understand this thing that people have. They're like, oh, well, he's running away. It's like, well, he just threatened my life, right? I don't understand this duty to retreat situation, which is, I have no idea if his car is like right on the same block and he's running into his car to go grab a firearm and come back. As far as I'm concerned, until you're completely out of my purview, I'm justified in shooting you. In terms of the mother who said to kill the witnesses, I want more information, because it is her claim, and even in the article it states this, that these people are egging on the fight. And so I don't know if this is just a traumatized person who had their head bashed into a corner by somebody, and someone else was filming and egging it on, and they feel like a co-conspirator that might also fucking attack them at any moment. They're a credible threat that didn't leave themselves from the situation. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter, because they didn't die, they got in their car, and he didn't kill the witnesses, right? So whether or not they should be charged with something in terms of that later is that. But I'd be interested to see what other people's are. In terms of the comparison to cops, cops are already criminals, right, by their very nature of existence. So, like, anything you do to a cop is already self-defense, no matter what it is that a police officer is doing. I just think it's bad tactics to attack cops, because it doesn't look good, and people still simp for cops. But cops are criminals. They're oath breakers. Whatever happens to them, happens to them, and I don't give a fuck.
All right. Well, if it happens in secret, there are no optics. So
yeah. If you can get away with fucking sniper rifle in a cop, you know what I mean, and like nobody ever catches you
in the video.
I mean, why not?
Hey.
That's absurd.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I said why not, which is an open-ended question. I did not advocate one
Thank
do
you
so.
for your opening.
Yeah.
I repudiate mods. I repudiate this.
A B in our DMs asked me, like, what is the line here? That's the line. Don't do that, okay, please. So let's go.
I'm just asking the questions, folks.
Yeah, well, okay. I'll try to keep it brief. But I guess maybe just FYI as like a PSA, that according to some people here, the state is unjustified. Just to get that out of the way. But yeah, as sort of already outlined, there's just in the two opening statements, there's like multiple perspectives here, and we'll probably never know the truth. Only the people involved will have some semblance of the truth, or the most accurate version of it. But so I don't have a lot to add based off of more or less. I'm in alignment with what Lactoid outlined in terms of like based off what's described in the article. If in fact it's true that the threat was neutralized and the person was running away and they were shot in the back, which that does appear to be the case, then I think pretty much I'm in alignment with Lactoid of like they're in the wrong. And I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so much. Bam.
Because I brought up the topic and because I'm black, some people have assumed what my opinion is going to be on this topic. But I think that the short answer is this mother didn't love her son. When you look at the situation, when you look at like you're having an argument in a hot dog restaurant, a person is giving you a threatening position, like you're a tiny woman, it's not your battle to win. Like walk away. It's super not worth it. She didn't. I can understand the son being a 14-year-old boy. Like people are saying, like, oh, they don't teach people to fight. I get that 14-year-olds are like in the middle of puberty, but I can understand the like fear of like someone putting their hands on your mother and an initial reaction. Because I think she even allegedly, I can't prove this, that she even told him to like get the gun initially from out of the car. So whenever he hit her, I understand the son's reaction of shooting initially. Whenever the guy fled, the mother told the son to follow him out and to keep shooting him until she knows he's dead. And the other person involved, I don't think they were just a random witness. I'm pretty sure it was the girlfriend of the guy. Well, like I said, this is alleged. It was the girlfriend of the guy who was like part of the initial, like I guess the initial situation happened between the girlfriend and the mother, and then the I guess the boyfriend stepped in to defend his girlfriend, which putting his hands on a woman is also disgusting. Like, I don't know, this was just a terrible moment involved, but hopefully I'm glad to hear the charges dropped because I don't believe this 14-year-old should face any legal consequences on it. It seems like he already has a terrible enough situation going on at home.
Am I misremembering? Like, I felt like that woman wasn't like a tiny woman. I feel like she was like just as tall as the guy who was hitting her. Not that like that makes it okay, but like, wasn't she just as tall?
She was like mom sized. I don't know.
She was a bigger lady.
Yeah. I don't know. But again, don't put your hands on people. HPCR.
Yeah, I mostly align with some of what Lactoid said, at least legally. Obviously, you can engage. It was a matter of self-defense. There's precedent for, protecting his mother, as she has a special relationship with him, and he probably thought she was in danger. If it is true that when he left, he followed him outside and shot after him, that is where it can get a little murky because, the duty of retreat, which I think Scott was very dismissive of. So yeah, I think legally there is precedent for charging them. Morally, it's maybe a little bit of a different conversation. It's a little more murky, and I will say I'm happy that to hear that the charges were dropped in this situation. Although we don't know if that was just like prosecutorial, discretion because he didn't think they had a case or whatever. But yeah, in general, I think that if it's true that he chased him, the law was broken technically. But anyway, we can get into the specifics.
Thank you, Jay Chow.
Yeah, I'm on Team Lactoid here. Just this whole thing is really messed up, and the more I looked into it, the worse that it got. I think a lot of those details that Lactoid was talking about are really important. I think what wasn't included is that the mother was the one with the concealed carry license holder, but it was the son who had the gun. The man fleeing the scene after getting shot, like, that's a pretty big deal. You're no longer a threat at that point. You shouldn't really be getting shot at that point. That's not self-defense. The mom told her to shoot and kill, and also told her son to shoot the witness, which like even though it didn't happen, like that's still a huge threat. By Scott's logic, it sounds like the witness then has the justification to take out their own firearm in order to shoot the son in order to protect his self-defense because he doesn't know whether or not the son is actually going to shoot. And like that just complicates things even more. Like I think that's why it's really important to have this idea of what is a credible threat, which includes, well, the man fleeing. He is no longer a threat. He is running away. Where I diverge from Lactoid's camp is what needs to be done. I feel like this situation is so messed up to the point where anything happens, it'll make me feel uneasy. I'll say this though, that I feel like a lot of the blame is to be put on the mother, who one allowed her son to carry the gun in the first place, and was the person to tell their son, okay, shoot these people, shoot to kill. It feels like the son was kind of just like listening to his mom, not really thinking about the consequences and things like that, and that's just like really fucked up.
Okay, thanks so much. B, I'd love to hear from you.
I think if you can support Kyle Rittenhouse for shooting someone in the back whenever he's in Kenosha, you can absolutely support a mother and their son shooting someone continuously. So Lactoid misrepresented some of these facts. So point one, when he shot someone in the back coming in to try and help his mother, and the man kept running away, he did exactly what people tell you to do in cases of self-defense, which is keep shooting until the target is down or your clip is empty. So the mother telling them that makes a lot of sense. When we try and parse this out as though it took a few minutes and these are conscientious or intentional decisions, that is where we apply a lot more intent that is not deserved in this case than it should be. Because if you read along with the article, you would see the mother also tried to take the gun from her son before getting in the car. She was clearly flustered and suffering from potentially concussion from getting hit in the head. And again, if we can have room for 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse shooting people correctly, as found by the courts of Wisconsin, I don't know why we wouldn't find this to also be correct. And how dare we for not applying that same standard to a black mother and her son that we would to a young white man.
Calling out a Lactoid on the floor, right? In your very first statement. I love it. All right. Already going up in my ranks. More of this. Let's go to our friend. Counterpoints, please. A former cop, and keep that in mind. All right, like parse his statements that way.
Yeah. So if you
don't come to my house without a warrant.
Okay, well, you and Scott don't try to take me out with a bolt action rifle, or it might become reciprocal. So, anyways, the law states that people can act in self-defense if there's an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. I think that, no other variable assumed. Mother standing in a hot dog stand, man starts putting his hands on her. Even if they had a verbal dispute or she had a verbal dispute with a different woman earlier on, that's no excuse to put the hands on. And on top of that, if you hit somebody in the temple or the chin, you can knock them out. They can hit their heads on walls, floors, tiles, metal. That's imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. So up to that point, with a kid coming in and basically shooting a few rounds, I think that you have a clear-cut case of self-defense. When the person is running away, though, he's already taken some rounds. One of the key words in the self-defense statute is imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. So if that person is retreating to a car, then you see them running towards their car, then you can articulate like, oh, I thought they were going to get a gun, pop, 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 and keep it going. If you can't articulate that, then the law will judge you harshly. Also, I don't know what the concealed carry laws or laws for 14-year-olds to, keep and bear arms in the state of Chicago is. I'm assuming it's not particularly lenient, but we can go with morality over legality for now. When it comes to so this is where the double standard thing kind of falls flat for me. As far as I know, Kyle Rittenhouse shot somebody, quote unquote, in the back because they were chasing him. He was running away in the opposite direction, stopped and turned. That person was falling as they got hit with the first round. And then as that person was falling down, they got hit with the subsequent rounds. I think that's different than somebody is fleeing from you and then you run up and then you put rounds in their back. We can debate that in the open. Finally, one thing that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do that I think is material to whether or not there's some level of criminal stuff here is he didn't try to murder the witnesses. So I would say that saying like, hey, kill the witness who has the camera or whatever, probably a bad move. And also, if you want to have more sympathy from law enforcement, if you want to have more sympathy from the state, more sympathy from people who you're going to invoke the right to self-defense with, then you should probably stay on scene, call law enforcement, identify yourself, complete a report, and then basically have whatever faith you can in the judicial system. And I'll let those contentions play out in the open.
All right.
I want to clarify Scott's position, because you mentioned, I think, an interesting word of like, when you're like, I guess, trying to neutralize a threat, you pretty much like, it seems like everything is justified until they're outside of your purview, I think was the sort of like the exact phrasing that you used. So I'm curious, what does that mean when is someone no longer in your purview, that it's no longer justified?
When there is a stopping of action. So whenever there is a breathing point.
Well, I was asking Scott in terms of what his position was.
You
Right.
want me to
from the legal
explain
background, it is a
Bea's
cessation
position?
of action.
I don't understand.
No.
Why do you want me to? Why do you want me to explain
maybe
my
I
position?
misspoke. I think
I'm confused.
Okay. So I might have misspoke, but I think I said Scott. In terms of like Scott, in your opening statement, you said that you're pretty much like concerned with threat until they're outside of your purview, unless I'm mistaken or misremembering. And so I'm curious as to what you mean by when are they outside of your purview in your estimation?
Yeah. So the legal system that we have is an arbitrary legal system of moral preferences that people vote on, and the loser loses, right? I'm talking about like an actual moral, ethical, legal system, right? So you are stopped from arguing that violence not be used against you once you have become the aggressor in a situation and presented yourself a credible threat, right? The credible threat is not up to the victim of the aggressor to then determine when that threat is no longer credible, right? So I don't give a fuck if someone is running away screaming, help me, he's got a gun, please help me. Once you are a credible threat, it doesn't matter. Like, you're already the aggressor. You have already chosen that any form of self-defense here extends until the moment that they are it's about intersubjectivity, right? So the observer of understanding that this person knows for a fact that they're no longer a threat, right? So like I stated previously, like if someone's running away, they could just be running to their car to get a gun, right? And so as far as I'm concerned, I have no problem with you shooting someone in the back screaming, help me, if they broke into your fucking house and started stealing your shit or made themselves a threat. I'm not talking about like our current legal system. Like I totally concede that like within our legal framework, right? That like that's not legal.
Yeah, I'm totally willing to set the legal stuff aside. I'm just trying to understand your moral framework. And like, let's just say they just like run like around a corner and they're no longer in your visible range. Is that still in your purview, or like what if you see them and they just fall to the ground and they're literally just playing dead? Are they then still justified? It's not the victim's responsibility to secure a criminal that is an aggressor and trying to kill somebody. So I don't give a fuck if they want to run around the corner and shoot them dead. Like, run around the corner and shoot them dead. Like, you're the one that tried to beat the shit out of somebody at a hot dog stand. So there's
might have tried to kill.
I just want to understand, but like, so there's no like temporal limit, as in like if someone aggresses upon you, like at some point you can like exact revenge. Like,
what if they were a mile away? Can we still shoot and kill? What if they were 2 miles away? Can we still shoot and kill?
There's no temporal limit, but there is a limit to the idea. There is a limit to the idea that once they've been...
You're misconstruing the facts whenever you talk about this. There was no disappearing around a corner for either the person or the sound.
That's not what I'm getting at. I bring up that
he's testing the limits of the hypothetical.
Like and try to misapply them in different analogies.
No, I'm not
asking what Scott believes. He's not applying it to the situation.
You are not understanding what I'm doing.
Okay. So let's go to Scott. I think you were trying to finish a point. So
yeah, I'll just finish real quick.
I'm going to Lactoid and Bam, and maybe if he wants to jump in.
What I'm saying is it's not the victim's responsibility, right? The victim that has been aggressed upon, right? And the criminal is stopped from arguing. Once they put the threat of violence against somebody else, they can't argue the non-aggression principle. They're violators of it. They can say that that's what they want to do, but their actions have proved against it. So the only way that we can resolve this situation is prior voluntary rules that everyone in the community has agreed to via contract, or some other entity or force that has that authority, be that our current police, be that private police, private security, whatever, has taken custody of this person. Then we can determine restitution, and considering that nobody died except for the criminal, right, in the hypothetical and in the real situation, then restitution likely wouldn't be execution, right? Restitution would be agreed upon by some arbitrating firm or whatever, or however it is that you want to do it.
Thank you. Let's
Okay,
go to
Sorry, go ahead.
In that same vein, are you referring to just like, Scott, aggression? Could it be any kind of aggression? So like let's say instead of punching her, he shoved her hard. Would that be like sufficient now for like him to get shot?
So self-defense in terms of using a firearm, right, would automatically go beyond what the individual is stopped from. Right. So this individual is committing attempted murder. He has this woman's face in a corner, is a grown man, and he's not a tiny guy, and is waylaying on her face repeatedly. Right? Like, as far as this woman is concerned and the son is concerned, he has shown via his actions that he is willing to kill this person. Or at the very least, he's willing to cause so much harm that their life is in serious threat. Now, if I nudge you harshly, then you're stopped from me walking up to you and going, "Hey, fuckface," and nudging you back. But if I pull out a gun and shoot you, I have become the aggressor.
Be right back.
Okay, so I understand your position. I'm not going to ask questions about it.
Proportionality, essentially.
Right, I'm just going to disagree with it in the sense of having no temporal limit. I think leads to some kind of absurd outcomes in the sense of, let's say someone's punching you, which I don't, yes, could that physical act of aggression have killed her? Absolutely. Me shoving somebody, if they fall backwards and hit their head, plenty of people have been killed by that. So where exactly the line is between attempted murder and like assault and battery can be difficult.
Yeah, this is a conversation for a different time, but
hold on, real quick. So this is important though, because either whichever one it is, right? Let's say he ran out. There's no temporal time limit here. Let's say it's like 3 weeks have passed, and they're driving past and they see, oh, that's the guy that punched you, Mom, and they pull out the gack and just fucking smoke him, right? That's just like that's not acceptable, okay? Because I think I'm not even considering like legality at this point. Like morally, if somebody's like posing a direct threat to you, if someone's aggressing upon you, I can see ending that threat. Even if your use of force and that threat is disproportional, right? Using a firearm if someone's punching you, using a firearm if someone's shoving you, okay, I'm okay with that. If they're coming at you, you should be able to end the threat. But if they're turned around and they're running away, they're not posing a direct threat to you. They're definitely not posing an imminent threat to you. And although I accept it's true that they could be like, yes, they could run home, get a gun, like become obsessed with you, and then like track you down 4 months later and kill you. This is all possible, but they've moved into a category of person that isn't as much of a threat to you to justify the use of defense or any kind of self-defense.
Yeah,
and by the way, so this isn't like
just to
duty or
clarify,
retreat, by the way.
Yeah. Just to clarify, you can disagree with the libertarian position because you're not really a libertarian. You're a minarchist, right? And that's fine, but don't strawman it, right? So the thing is that it's not about the time. What it's about is what it is that they are what they have communicated and what they are stopped from arguing, right? So when I say there is no temporal limit, right, and you then bring in an example of the person leaves. They have now communicated that they are no longer a threat, not by them leaving, but by you being in separate cities, separate areas, right? And so if you happen upon them again, what they are now stopped from is it's no longer a self-defense thing, but they are still stopped from arguing that you not waylay on their face and threaten their life, right? You would then become the aggressor if you attempted to assassinate them.
Wait, why would you become the aggressor if you did the exact same thing that you said there's no temporal limit on by shooting them?
I said yes, if you do the exact same thing that they did, which would be pure restitution, proportionality, which is threaten their life and then beat the shit out of them, which is what that person did.
No. So the guy ran out the store and he's running away, and you said it's justified for the kid to shoot this guy
Yes.
because there is no temporal limit even if he's running away. That's what you said. So if there's no temporal limit, why does that change if it's a week from now?
So if it's a week from now, right, it's not the time that has changed. It is the behavior that has changed, right? This is not a person that is fleeing still on the scene while emotions are occurring. This is a person that has gone home, right? This is a person that has then gone to their 9-to-5 job multiple times. They have engaged in other behavior that shows at a certain point is going to show that they are no longer in the act of attempting to find and kill you.
The guy, he's running away. Like, is that not a display of behavior of like trying to get the fuck away from somebody?
Yeah, I already
Like,
consider that a different
evidence
state.
it's evidence of such, but it's not irrefutable. If someone because
it's not irrefutable if it's a week later. It's not irrefutable if it's a week later. He could get home. He could be like, I'm gonna fucking find her. I'm gonna kill her. And then like a week goes by.
Plotting and scheming.
He could be plotting, couldn't he? I mean, this guy was just shot at
Every night in the shower. He's like,
he is still
I'm gonna bring my machine gun.
He is still an aggressive
Batman
criminal,
voice.
right? That is stopped from being violently beaten and having their life threatened. But
Okay,
that's
Okay,
you see what I'm
can I
saying?
say one last thing?
okay.
So
Connor, don't worry, you're on the list.
Yeah. I'm done. I'm done with. I guess we're just at an impasse here. I think this is not good. Two quick things. I don't think the special relationship matters. I don't think the 14-year-old having a gun is actually particularly relevant for the self-defense. B, a quick question for you. Which of the victims, or the quote-unquote victims, that Kyle Rittenhouse shot were running away from him at the time of them being shot?
I find that to be an irrelevant point.
Why?
You said there was no
You're really just gonna
principal
be
Because I
knowledge
don't care
testing
about
her on
Kyle
this?
Rittenhouse. I just find it very hypocritical for you.
She
to
compared it to
support-
Rittenhouse.
Yeah, but usually
You brought it up, so it's
you
irrelevant.
Specifically,
Take the L.
Right. So you can either let me answer or not. So again, to be clear, I understand that Kyle Rittenhouse is a personal QR for you, and he's technically doing exactly what this 14-year-old boy is doing, which is utilizing a
No!
gun whenever he had no right or reason or business doing so
Wrong.
in defense of himself and others. I'm not wrong whenever I state that.
I'm going to ask the
Well,
question
you wanna
again.
litigate it?
Well, I'm going to ask the question again. So you just said that it's the same
There's a
thing,
new
right?
panel.
So
Wait,
Kyle
did you just call
Rittenhouse.
me bitch?
What?
What?
No, nobody called you. Anyway,
Nobody said that.
so I'm going to ask you.
No, certainly not.
I'm going to ask
Okay,
you.
great.
I'm going to ask you the question again. Okay. So you said that these two situations are the same. In one situation, you have a kid who apparently shot a guy running away. If they're the same situation, my question for you is, which of the people did Kyle
No,
Rittenhouse
she's trying
shoot
to
that
make
were running
up
away from
slurs now to run away from this question.
What's the name of the person that got shot by the 14-year-old kid?
I don't remember his name. I mean, did any of them?
I don't
Did the first
remember names
person?
either.
Did the
They're
first
irrelevant
person?
then.
Okay, well then, in the order of who got shot, did the first person was the first person running away from Kyle Rittenhouse?
No, I believe he killed that person. It may
No, no,
have
no.
been the paralyzed person or the
Who-
person that he ended up
Wait,
paralyzing.
the paralyzed
What we're-
person
what
was
we're
running
getting-
away.
But none of them were running away, is what we're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
So what? Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I'll just put a bow on this.
Yeah.
None of them are running away. They were all running at Kyle Rittenhouse.
Right.
If at the beginning of Rosenbaum, who was the first guy that Kyle Rittenhouse shot, if Rosenbaum was shot at, he quickly turned around and started running away, and then Kyle Rittenhouse started shooting at him as he was running away. That'd be a very different. That'd be
It's the
hold
exact
on.
same thing that happened in this case,
Hold on. That'd be a very diff. Yeah, it would be. Then it would be identical to what happened in this case, and Kyle Rittenhouse would be wrong if he shot at Rosenbaum as Rosenbaum was running away. That's not what happened. All the videos. I don't know if you've seen them. All the videos demonstrate people running at him.
Okay, all right. So I don't want to. I'm gonna do this whole thing. But we're gonna go to Bam. B, you're on the list. Then we'll go to counterpoints, and then Corey. If other people want to jump in, raise your hand. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say something just before then. All right. And Scott, please. 3 sentences.
I'm chilling.
Please. Okay. I'm just. I'm a little curious about your position because I think it's fascinating, right?
So do I.
It's so interesting. With that, about that lack of a temporal limit. So, like, if guy shoots at you and your family, you shoot back, all right? You hit him. and he's driving in a car, right? Or you scare him and he's running away anyway, and he's driving a car, you jump into your car and you're chasing them, right? Like if that car never runs out of gas, right? If that car is just never stopped, isn't this chase? Is it like at there's
so the OJ self-defense that he should have used, right? Yeah, no. So, like, to give it an analogy, why I'm saying that the temporal difference alone is not enough, right? That it's the change in behavior, right? To illustrate this is I'll give since we're going into extremes with one, I'll go into my own extreme, which is let's say someone comes into your house, right, and starts trying to, I don't know, threatens your family in some way and starts beating you up, and you chase him off with a gun, and then he goes into your front yard. Just out your front yard, like on the sidewalk, and just camps on the sidewalk forever, right? Like it doesn't matter that like he's there for 2 days. Like there's still a menacing threat that is existent within your area from someone that has communicated that they're willing to kill you, right? Now, in the act of him running to the sidewalk, I don't think you have some duty to all of a sudden stop firing when his vehicle is parked right there on the sidewalk and he could grab a gun and come back with the means to kill you. That is my argument, is that just because he's hanging out by his car, 6 hours later and the police don't show up for some reason, doesn't mean that it wouldn't still be self-defense because the behavior hasn't changed. He's in the immediate area, he's immediate threat, and he's already communicated, or she, that they're willing to kill you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Bam, B, Connor, Corey.
Okay, yeah. I think so I looked up the most up-to-date facts on the situation, and I continue to say, like, I don't think anyone should have any opinion on the child, charges being pressed against the child, just based on the facts of the situation. Now again, the mother is a completely different situation, but the child wasn't even carrying the gun. The mother texted him and told him to come to the restaurant and bring the gun. And I think that there's a reasonable expectation, especially when you're dealing with a kid that young, that like you follow your parents' instructions. So especially when your mother's like he feels like her life is at risk. So she came to the restaurant. He followed her directions. He came to the restaurant with a gun. Once he seen the man hit his mother, he shot the guy. The guy ran off. He didn't even immediately chase. The mom told the kid to chase and make sure to continue shooting him until she's sure he's dead. And then she told, like I said, I also confirmed the extra person in the situation. It wasn't just a random witness. It was the girlfriend of the guy who initiated the situation, and the girlfriend apparently called the boyfriend and told him to come down and to defend her, and told her basically to like beat up the mother. So that it was kind of a situation where she wasn't like trying to shoot the woman as like to like cover up the situation. It seems like she still was going on her like feud of anger because the girlfriend started the situation, I guess, or like was one of the initiators of it, which doesn't make it okay. And it seems that whenever the son didn't shoot, the mother attempted to take the gun to shoot the witness, and the son like fought her off, like, and said like you're being irrational. So though the murder charges against the mother was dropped, it seems that she still is facing a charge of contributing to the delinquency of a minor, which I feel like is flat out probably the correct situation. The only thing that's unfortunate is if the mother does go to jail or prison, like depending on who else the child has in their life, the child may end up in even worse outcomes, and they're already having to deal with the concept of killing someone. And I think I think the child's a victim.
Or better, I feel like if the mother is going to go as far as texting her son in the car to grab the gun and then tell her during the situation to shoot and kill this person, and then tell her son to kill the witness, then like I feel like that it might be kind of good to get the mother out of her son's like life, because that sounds like pretty toxic. I mean, that's only from one situation.
Sure, but it's
and
just
like that's really limited. But like I feel like that's already.
He'd be better in a group home than with that. Come on,
that's not
Testing. All right, so Mike is back. Do I need to create a new stream? Let's see. All right, stream stayed. All right, refresh. Can you hear me on the new stream? All right. Can you hear me, Mark? All right, cool. Oh, I got to re-put my headphones on. That's what that is. All right, boys, I'm backstage. It'll take me just a second.
Step fucking process that we seem to have to do every time Fabian is with us. And basically, like, the truth is that we've already resolved a lot of these moral situations, and we've decided that temporally, like, you can decide temporal imminent, and then if it's not, you involve the state. And so my recommendation, what I think if there was something that we could pull from this, is that we actually should have some level of legal education for kids. I would say probably at the high school level to talk about, how do you deal with traffic stops? How do you deal with citations? What does the court process look like? How do you do justified self-defense? What's the idea of curtilage? What is the idea of, I'm trying to think of what else, but like petty theft, gross theft, grand theft, felonies versus misdemeanors, all that kind of stuff. And you don't have to do it like, hey, inter-school black kids, we think that you're going to be criminals, so we want to educate you on, it first. It's more like a civics class of just educating the broad American general public on how to interact with the criminal justice system as it currently exists. And, maybe the social justice people could talk about issues that are messed up that we should change. And then, boom, there you go. You got progressives happy because we're talking about how to change the justice system. You got conservatives happy because we're talking about how not to get shot by police.
Sounds pretty
I'm
reasonable.
sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry. Did someone else just interject? No? Okay.
I said that sounds pretty reasonable. But
Yay!
not an interjection.
Anything
Authoritarian
education has my
centrism wins
support.
again.
I was fixing my computer, so I neither confirm nor deny any allegations, nor agree or disagree with anything that was said in the last few minutes. Storm knocked out my internet.
I want to quickly, and this is just a question. Let's just say the roles were reversed for a second, and it was like a woman who like full on like overhand hit a guy twice, and then like a kid shot her. She was running away. Kid kept shooting at her, and then like a guy was directing his son to like kill a witness. Does that like change your opinion? I mean, maybe not Scott, but for those of you other people here, did that change your opinion at all?
I can certainly say that it will change the opinions of the masses.
I think so. I do think so.
Was the
I'm gonna say
person
my opinion on the
in the
kid.
same kind of danger? Because in that sense, it wouldn't change much. Yeah. Like when you say she overhand slaps him, is she threatening his life? Is there a sense of imminent danger? Because if so, of course you would still be okay with the
Yeah.
self-defense.
So like, let's say he's like a left wing man, right? So he's like smaller and like not as like capable, and then you have like a very large woman who's like throwing punches, right? I don't know. I still think that there would be a little bit of a different like public opinion about this because
Yeah, public opinion maybe, sure,
Yeah.
and just because of perceived, whether or not it seems like that person's life is in danger. But that would be up to them and the courts to decide whether that was true, whether it was imminent. Of course, it still wouldn't be okay if the person ran away for you to shoot at them, given our legal code. That would just never be the case.
well, apparently it is okay because the charges were dropped.
Well, no, I mean that doesn't necessarily mean that,
but
right?
wait, Lactoid, did you like?
could have found that
I
it wasn't
know,
a
I
worthy
know.
case to investigate? I mean, it might not be that.
Well, I know that's what they said.
It's Chicago, so they're like, we got like another 6 of these that are worse. So
Seems a little bit like this is the black woman getting a white man's justice, and I'm here for it, to be quite honest with you.
Jesus Christ!
You know she killed a
Shit
black
like
man,
that.
right?
White justice
Yeah.
is pretty dope.
Yeah, you
Technically,
can't
her
say
son
shit like that.
did.
and then
I was
not
just gonna
have
say-
us come back on the Kyle Rittenhouse.
She
thing.
directed
I was
it.
just gonna say Chicago.
I don't think there's
not
any
even that
justice in
violent of a
this.
city
Yeah, it's not even like top 10
it's
murders.
overblown.
We could dress this up in like racially like language too, right? A black man, like enough violence against black men. This is awful, right? If you want to play that game, he was shot while running away. It's just so bizarre. Like
Black
Scott,
on black crime.
Scott, I'm most surprised about this from you, Scott, because I thought we agreed before on like minimal force necessary to like end a threat. If someone's like, if someone
Well,
was like obviously doesn't have a gun and
disagreeing
running
when
away,
the threat ends, though.
I
You're
was-
disagreeing when the threat ends, is what Scott's point is.
So, but
he
ends beyond.
No, the
which I don't know why.
gentleness principle is in regards to a threat to your persons or property. One should use minimal necessary. Well, not minimal necessary, because you get into weird stuff when you say necessary. But one ought use minimal force. We'll just leave it at that without getting into like the deep weeds of the theory. In terms of understanding the threat and getting the threat to go away. Once you get, so like, for example, if like a grandma, right, is walking down the sidewalk and stumbles onto your lawn, right? Like that is a credible threat to your private property rights, right? Like she is now damaging your lawn, right? But that doesn't mean that you pull out like you don't fucking like, and so anyways, I started blasting, right? Like you need to communicate like what is going on, right? There are certain steps, but if grandma was actually like, in really good shape and, busts into your house and is ready to kill you, right? Like what she's communicating is a threat to your life, and you can use whatever force is necessary to stop that threat to your life. Now, there would be, God, I don't want to get too deep into the ANCAP theory. I'm just going to say it's different and fucking say you and I should have a
Everybody
conversation.
here.
Yeah, like I just don't want to drag this into it. Like we can have a conversation about gentleness principle, you and I, some other time.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, so wait,
I'd like to speak to really quickly is even so. I'm glad that the 14-year-old knew how to shoot. I also want to ask us to put ourselves in his shoes. Whenever someone is in a situation that is, I don't want to say deeply traumatic, adrenaline inducing or hazardous or cause for concern, asking that they are going to be able, like asking that they're not just going to be in a reptilian brain and just shoot until the gun starts clicking. And also, I apologize. It's not a clip. It's a mag. I did not mean to make such a silly mistake.
Leftist confirmed.
I own guns and I'm a registered Republican.
The plot thickens.
Yeah. That really upset you? Like, God damn.
Who'd you vote for though?
It didn't upset me. I'm just letting you know, like maybe I'm a little bit more complex. That's all.
And that you're
Whenever
wrong.
it comes to
Yes,
this,
people
whenever
are
the
indeed more
14-year-old
complex than jokes.
Okay, go ahead, B, please.
14-year-old is still shooting. I don't necessarily know when. So again, according to the facts, yes, turn around and he was running away, but the child just kept shooting and squeezing the trigger. It didn't seem like he shot, he re-aimed, and then he just tried to keep going. It sounded more like it was one continuous motion, which at that point in time, I not only have a little bit more room for someone continuing to shoot until even in the back, but not being able to correctly evaluate when something is or isn't a threat. Again, if what I've been taught in any self-defense or course with guns is if someone does invade your house or you are trying to save yourself and others, you just shoot until the clip is empty or until you are certain nobody is getting back up. Because that's what you're supposed to do in that situation if you are going to break a gun out.
Okay.
I don't know that that's what this young man was thinking, but just to provide context.
Okay, so I want to kind of take this apart because there's some good things here and there's some things that I definitely disagree with. So adrenaline out situations are absolutely a factor in like judging somebody's behavior. So I think that I've been looking for the entirety of the security camera footage. I haven't been able to find it. I looked for the entirety of the cell phone footage. I wasn't able to find it. I was only finding things that seemed to be like paused and commented on by other people. So maybe this is part of the prosecutor's judgment, is the fact that, like, let's say haymakers, 5 or 10 seconds, kid comes in with a gun, puts a couple of rounds, guys running out of the store, and it's literally a matter of seconds, and the mom says, hey, go get his ass or some shit. He steps out, keeps blasting, dude goes down. I agree with you that adrenaline is a mitigating factor in that, but it would still be, I think, the education system that would say that that's incorrect, that you should not fire in that scenario. Now, you don't have to charge in that scenario, but that it's still incorrect because of the imminent threat to death and great bodily harm is your judgment.
Yeah, I think it would be a different situation if it was just a mom shooting. Like, I think that, but like involving, like, he's following
If he
instructions.
doesn't know whether that man has another gun, has something else, is going to go get something
Well, and
else
you
to
can
hurt his
Legally,
and you
though,
can use that as a defense. And by the way, I think the adrenaline and the time lapse and all that kind of stuff, like if a police officer was being investigated for the same thing where he's shooting at someone, but then that person starts running away and the police officer continues to shoot, part of the investigation is, well, why did you continue to shoot? And if they're able to articulate, like, I thought that they were going back to a car, or, this person has previous charges that I was aware of in their warrant that said that they had access to weapons, or there was a family over there and I was worried for their health and safety. As long as you can articulate those kinds of things, then you can use that as a part of your defense. That doesn't mean that the prosecutor shouldn't evaluate that. And that also doesn't mean in an ideal situation, we're talking about ideal, not adrenaline brain, not reptile brain. In an adrenaline brain, or excuse me, in ideal brain, you would say once the person is running or retreating and you don't think that there's an imminent threat or death or great bodily harm, you back off. And that's like the standard that we should idealize, if not always properly execute.
So the problem I have here, or not the problem, I agree with you. The question I have here is the last part that you said, which is when it seems like they are running away or no longer a threat, right? And I think whenever you get into situations like that, you're just kind of rendered stupid in a big way. And I don't know that unless you've been trained to try and evaluate, like, am I still in danger or not, you don't really know how to, I don't know, stop that or not.
But then
It
that
also-
means
so
that
we're
the
giving this
cop-
person a pass based off his ignorance?
I have a pertinent example that I think you guys will disagree with. There was that law enforcement officer in North Carolina who got into a fight over a traffic stop where the dude's brake lights was out and his driver's license was suspended. They fight over the police officer's taser. The cop gets shot with the taser, but it doesn't activate. The guy is running away, and the cop pulls his gun and shoots him.
Oh, is this the Wendy's parking lot?
Yeah, it wasn't a parking lot. It was like a field. I think it was in North Carolina. But basically, like, everyone threw this cop under the bus because they said, the dude is running away. He doesn't have a weapon. The taser's already discharged. You're not incapacitated. And effectively what happened was a guy was running away and you shot him in the back. Now, I think that cop can assert the defense of, well, I had adrenaline brain. I didn't know where my taser was. I didn't know what his levels of warrants were. But this cop ended up getting prosecuted and convicted. And I'm pretty sure he's like serving a pretty decent prison stance. So I'm saying there's the ideal. And I've heard you, and I concede there is lizard brain and there's adrenaline, and that needs to be a variable calculated in prosecution. I agree with you on that. What I'm saying is we should not set the standard that you can use that as an excuse to plug people in the back, because then people will use that excuse all the time.
Yeah, I'm thinking
including
of
me
in Atlanta. Yeah.
Let's go to Corey.
Sounded real.
Yeah. So Scott, you might want to, you may not want to drag into ANCAP theory, but
Wait, are we doing? No, I wanted to do something before we go back here because we're gonna we dedicated like 20 minutes. I just want to.
I just have a couple of. I think they're going to be somewhat straightforward, but we'll see. Because like me and Scott have quite a few conversations and I generally understand more or less, like, even though I don't agree with it, I usually understand its framework, but this is one of the few times where like I am actually genuinely curious. So like hypothetically, if I run into a stranger, and let's say they punch me in the face, okay? They don't knock me out, but then right after they punch me in the face, they stop, and this is from somebody's comedy act, you might know who. They stop and they punch themselves in the face to the equal force. Am I justified in doing anything in that circumstance?
I mean, the self-inflicted punch, yes, I assume you're still justified in some form of restitution. They just assaulted you and then they went crazy. So they assaulted you and now they're a crazy person. I mean, I don't know. Are they
Get a
also
pepper
screaming
spray
it's
first
just a
and ask
prank,
questions
bro?
later in that case.
Well, so like I'm curious, like in your restitution, because like technically the restitution is there if they punch themselves in the face. I mean, let's say they inflicted the same damage. Let's say we can quantitate this.
That's not restitution, right? Like if I'm a heroin addict and I like steal your TV, but then like I overdose on heroin, I did more damage to myself than I did to you in terms of stealing your TV, but like I'm still owed restitution for the stolen TV. It's not my fault. You're a fucking heroin addict, right? Like what you do to yourself is not automatically restitution.
Okay, so then what would restitution be in that case?
I mean, that question can only be answered by what is the system of justice that you have communally and contractually set up, right? So like if you have a company set up with a voluntary
so just depending on the
contract,
society that happens to exist at the time, whatever.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like if you're an Amish society, which is real close to
understand.
ANCAP, like it's going to be different than like if
I
an
understand.
insurance company
Whatever
handles it.
the society that ends up existing, I get it. So to further understand,
But
your
it also
framework-
could just be pure theory, punching dude in the fucking face and saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
watch
it
where you're
could.
fucking walking, my guy."
Yeah, I totally understand. It's like whatever happens to play out in the marketplace of ideas or the marketplace of morality. So now, to further understand your framework, at least in this more hopefully more relevant to this context, and sort of like this temporal issue that I observed. So let's say someone, a younger person, let's say a teenager, they have been bullied.
I didn't do this, by the way, Prime guys.
I know.
This one's not my fault.
Let's say they were in school and they were bullied, and they're pretty much physically bullied, and in their mind there have been a credible threat to their life. Where understand they're just getting beaten up, but the fight was broken up, and so like whatever, they're no longer the threat is neutralized. But is there basically, if I run into this person 5 years later, am I justified in restitution or taking their life or using physical force in that context?
I'm not going to get into the idea of like a guardianship and a libertarian philosophy on the rights of children. I'll just leave it.
Okay, so
I'll
they're
just
a
leave it.
19-year-old. They're a 20-year-old.
Right. I will like, okay, well, now that it's a 19 or a 20-year-old, right? Like 5 years later, yes, they still committed a crime against you, right? And they're still a criminal. They're stopped from arguing that they not pay restitution. If I steal your fucking TV and then 5 years later you buy a new TV, and then 5 years later, I see you, I'm like, hey, that's that fucker that stole my TV. I want my TV
I'm trying to
back.
understand your morality. I'm trying to understand. You're not answering the question. So let's say they're a 20-year-old, okay, and they were physically assaulted, but it was broken up, okay, and then 5 years later, or whatever amount of time years later, am I morally justified in shooting them?
What? I never.
Oh my
no.
god, he's just trying to understand when an imminent threat is no longer an imminent threat under your fucking ANCAP autist fucking system. But I don't
I've
give a
already
fuck because it's
explained
all
this
goddamn
multiple
theoretical and I
times.
don't give a shit.
He did explain it. I don't know why we were going back to it.
I already explained the
Understand it
temporal
clearly.
difference between the behavioral difference, right? Like they're still a criminal. They still demand restitution. You don't get to assassinate them over a schoolyard fight.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bam.
All right, stop indulging his autism.
Please.
It's fucking. It's his
Really
fascination.
wonderful
Let him
thing
be
about our
autistic.
Oh
judicial
no,
system
y'all do
is-
not get to go again.
Bam.
Question.
Bam.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just chilling. All right. Like,
Lactoid. So this, like, actually related. Like, so this question is like 25% a mean, but it's like 75% real.
Hit me.
Do you would like the exact same situation plays out in the train car? Do you feel differently? Does that change anything for you?
No.
Like, because I could honestly see the argument if you did say like, oh, you're in an enclosed space. Where it's
So
like-
for no. So well, hold on. Being in an enclosed space, I think, can matter when you're evaluating.
I'm not asking you legally. I'm asking
No,
you
I know.
Yeah.
But I would still assert that being in a closed space should matter when we're like evaluating whether or not this person's actions were reasonable. But what I'm looking for is like, let's say in a train car, you have that situation where the guy gets shot twice, and then he runs to like the other side of the train or like the subway car, and then like lays down in the corner with his like hands up, right? would you think you clearly would think it's like fucked up that the 14-year-old followed him over with him like laying in the corner with his hands up and just starts like blasting him while he's laying on the floor? That'd be pretty fucked, right?
Sure, but that goes like in a more reasonable argument to like Scott's argument of like what's imminent, what's not. I'm saying that like if it was like everything happened in like a 5-second period, like shot, he turns like
my answer is, well, yeah, if you're gonna train, so they were somewhat in an enclosed space when you actually watch, like when you watch the video, it's like a one room kind of like corner store kind of setup. And so if and she was kind of like backed into a corner. That's absolutely true. And I like I said, the first 2 shots were 100% reasonable, right? He is attacking her, no doubt. You can use lethal force to kill somebody attacking you. Maybe not legally, according to in all such situations, but according to my moral philosophy, you should be able to. But whether it be in a tram, whether it be in that little thing, whether it be in the streets, right? If somebody's like coming at you, and then like you start shooting them, and they get hit, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" They turn around and run away, right? As long as there's not now the one circumstance I can think of that would make me change my mind here, and unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever know this because I don't think a video exists. But if he's turning around and running away, and his hands are like reaching in front of his waistband, then that could be an issue, right? Then, maybe he is reaching for a gun, right? But if he's just running, I don't think it's okay to shoot somebody running away from you.
The reason I was asking is like as far as what we consider life threatening, like this goes back to the conversation we had about the dude in the train car. So that was like main portion of it. But thanks for your answer. This is like Corey actually ended up making Scott talk about it so much that now I have like 2 seconds of engagement with this topic of imminent threat. And
Timer starts now. 2 seconds. Go.
Yeah. I think that there's like, as crazy as it sounds, there's a weird there is like a weird murky territory, specifically when it involves particularly like gang violence. I've heard situations where like the concept of revenge, especially in like in related to gang violence, is pretty realistic. And I know of situations, or like I have like people that I know of situations who have been in cases where like, gang situation breaks out, someone from one side ends up dying, and now he heard from like a reputable source that there's like they're going to shoot up this guy's mom's house. Like, okay, we're gonna go kill his mom now. Like that's the payback. So he like hides in the bushes. As soon as he sees like the car pull up to his mom's house. Now again, they haven't shown themselves to be a threat. He believes he reasonably believes like, oh, okay, they said they're gonna kill my mom. They're pulling up at her house. He shoots them on spot. Like, I think that like, regardless of how you feel legally, I think that's murky on how you feel on could he reasonably consider these people a threat, even if it was like a week later.
I'm good with it. Just don't tell the cops or the state attorneys that shit.
Oh yeah, he did.
Be like, oh, I was cleaning my gun on the front porch and I saw a car pass by my house and I was like, that looks like the people who threatened my mom. So I reassembled my gun really quick. And then they passed by a second time and they said, I'm going to shoot you, Jerome. And then I was like, all right, pop, 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 pop. And that's what happened. And then just
under this theory though, how would you criminalize gang violence?
What?
Every killing is just going to be like, well, no, that's just to prevent this person from killing me a week later.
I mean, that's the problem.
Wasn't talking about
This is the problem with
just like more.
No, this is the problem with like honor culture, by the way. So I can't speak to it completely, but there's like dignity culture and honor culture. Some psychotherapists talked about it who's way smarter than me. Dignity culture is like every human being is entitled to a certain standard of living, and whenever you violate that, the system should impose a penalty on it. Whereas like honor culture says that you have to have like a certain level of like reputation that is held within esteem of the community, and if somebody violates your sense of honor, then you're entitled to a certain level of retribution. So this is where in a dignity culture, you could go to, if somebody was threatening to kill your mom, you could go to law enforcement and say, hey, I'm hearing this thing. Let's go through the system. Let's try to prevent it. Let's scare them off, blah, blah, blah. Whereas honor culture says, you're coming after my people. I'm going to come after you. So I think that the ideal world is probably where we go dignity over honor. But at the same time, if somebody's threatening to kill your fucking mom and you end up clapping them up, I'm not I'm not going to hold anything against you.
Just for a point of clarification, the main aspect of dignity culture is where reputation management is derived from. So it's more about like, I'm a doctor or and I'm an engineer, right? So like certain things and jobs that you do within the greater society is where you're gaining your reputation from. Whereas older societies, or like, let's say like the antebellum South, for example, you as an individual man and how you will be judged within the community, etc. But the end point is exactly like Counterpoint said. But from the beginning, the dignity culture is more about where you derive reputation management from.
I'm going to give it another go around with Scott. Maybe
God
with a
damn.
more.
Fucking why?
Okay, so
He's not even
just
doing it to us this time.
I
You're
know,
doing
I
it to us, Corey.
Right.
Okay,
I just want to know when you guys
You're
throw
not
out
gonna pin them down
autistic
to an exact
insults.
rule.
Yeah, what do you
No,
want?
no,
I don't know.
I mean,
There's
it's
nothing
fine.
to know.
I think
No,
I found
it's
the
fine.
I think
It's just-
Corey's got
hold
him.
on, hold on,
Go ahead.
hold on.
Yeah,
Here we go. I'm gonna let
Yeah,
him
okay.
cook. I'm gonna let him cook, but real quick. I'm gonna let him cook, but real quick. When you guys start throwing out the autistic shit, I want you to know it's Corey that's trying to drill it down to an extreme hypothetical to test my limits. I'm not being the fucking autist here, all right?
Yeah,
You're
I will
right.
totally bite that. So let's just say it plays out exactly more or less as it does, as described here, as you understand it, but slight modifications. Let's say, the 14-year-old happens to be an excellent marks person, and they're able to take out the knees of the person, okay? And they're now crawling away. Are they now justified in walking up and shooting them in the back?
Any excellent marksman will tell you that you shoot for center mass, that you don't try and take out.
That doesn't have
there you
yeah, so, but let's just say they do shoot
How about
and
this?
take
How about
out
this? I'll go
He's
further for
Buster
you. I'll go
Scruggs.
further
He
for
can
you.
just fucking
I'll-
nail him right in the knees.
I'll go this for you. If you pull out a fucking firearm, okay, this is not a fucking game. When you pull out a firearm and you aim it at another human being, it is always shoot to kill. There's never an incident where the goal
That doesn't
is
answer
not
my
to put that
question.
person
No,
on the
actually,
fucking
that's
ground
just
and
not
kill
true.
them.
You could use it as
That's-
a deterrent just to scare
That's
off
not,
the other
that doesn't
person.
answer my question. Like, if
No,
this is
no,
hypothetical.
don't play that bitch behavior. Warning shots are
the
fucking
one being-
bullshit.
Well,
You're not answering
It
anything.
doesn't have to be as black and white as shoot to kill or don't do anything.
Well,
You could
it-
actually
it-
just show off the gun and not pull the trigger.
When
Clarification.
you
If the person
pull out
just
a
going to
fucking-
back off when
Yeah,
they see a
that's
gun, then they
cool,
just run
cool.
away. Like I literally just saw a video probably today
No.
where a guy got out of his truck, started banging on the other car like in a fit of road rage. The other guy got out of his car, pulled out a gun, and you know what the other guy did? He walked back to his car and drove on. No one died in that.
If you want to fire a warning shot, right? If you want to waste your
It's
bullets,
not
to
even
fire
a warning shot. You just show it. You know what?
Okay.
In all
Listen,
actuality,
okay,
most
no
people
war-
are pussies.
Shh. If you want to pull out a gun and brandish a firearm as a threat to the other person, that if they continue their behavior, you will shoot and kill them, and it works out for you, great. But let me tell you, right? When you're pulling that firearm out, you are also escalating that situation. When someone comes up and they're willing to engage in some type of physical fight, and then you pull out a firearm, right? The other person is also, they might run away. They also might be like, oh, I guess it's time we pull out guns, right? So when you're pulling out,
Totally
don't pull out a
could be.
fucking gun.
So you
Don't
recognize
pull
one.
out a
Okay, so what you
fucking
really
gun
need to say,
unless you're
what
ready
you
to
really
kill
need to say is
somebody.
that when a person pulls out a gun, be willing to shoot and kill. Okay, don't
Yes.
just brandish it and just be a symbol. But what you said, which I find a problem, is you have to shoot and kill, which is not necessarily true.
You should
There are
not.
other
what I'm-
ways
what
to
I-
use.
What I'm trying to say is you should not be pulling out a fucking firearm that you don't plan to use. That it is a bad move to pull out a firearm to brandish to try and scare them off.
Okay.
Right? Now, if you
There's
want
a
to scare
slight
them off,
correction.
you can show them and be like, "Hey, I'm armed, and if you keep coming at me, I'm going to pull this gun." But once you pull that gun, you should point it at the person. You should pull the trigger, and you shouldn't fucking stop until you're out of ammunition.
Okay, so that completely contradicts what you just said of like you don't have to,
No,
but
it
you
doesn't.
have to.
Again,
Where's the
I don't-
contradiction? I
Wait,
just
wait.
commented.
This also, so you're not supposed to like, okay, I don't know, maybe this is your moral
Well,
system, but like,
If you want
generally
to
speaking-
step in and save J Chow, go ahead.
Yeah, so well, he made a little bit of he made a point that I think is important, right? Which is like I've heard multiple times here. You're supposed to shoot to kill. Slight correction, and this is actually important. You're supposed to shoot for center mass until the threat stops. Okay, that's it. You're not. So if they fall on the ground and they're no longer a threat, You're not, oh, well, I'm supposed to shoot to kill them. I'm supposed to fucking mag dump them. No, actually, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to shoot for center mass until the threat stops. Right?
You would like, sure, if you want to take it from a legal perspective of how we've arbitrarily
and a
decided,
moral perspective.
From
right?
a moral
if they're no longer
perspective,
a threat,
you don't know that. Like, you can shoot people
never
center mass
know
and they
that.
drop and get back up.
I asked you.
That's what I'm saying. Is that if you're fucking pulling a firearm out, you need to be aware that the intention of pulling out a firearm is not to just like, oh, they're going to be neutralized in happy unicorn land. The point of a fucking firearm is to kill people.
Okay.
Here's
the hypothetical that I want an answer to. What if he was butt naked and you could see he had no gun on him whatsoever, and he was laying there in the middle of the floor bleeding? Is the kid justified in just shooting him while he's laying on the ground?
So the kid is
also transparent?
naked.
No, wait, let me answer that, because this literally happens.
This
This literally happens with like meth heads, right? There'll be like a meth head who's like high as fucking meth, like butt naked, running on the street. They get shot. They're laying up because meth heads are fucking crazy, right? They get shot and they're laying on the ground bleeding. Like, should the cop be able to walk up and be like, "Hey, he punched me," bam, just blow his head off?
Well, now you change it to a cop, right? Like the cop.
Okay,
is
not a cop.
there with
Fucking,
the-
not a cop. Not a cop.
They're not deserving of human rights.
Yeah. Sorry, it's me, right? A meth head punches me in the face, and I'm pissed as fuck because why he punched me in the face really hard. I could have died, and then like I shoot him, and then he like falls flat on his back. He's laying on the ground. He's butt naked, no gun whatsoever within sight, and I got my gun trained right on him. What's the threat?
I will bite the bullet just like that meth head should eat lead. Okay? Yeah, keep fucking firing. I don't know that the PCP fucking whacked out dude isn't going to get up and fuck you up. I have been saying this. I haven't been running from anything.
No, I think you ran quite a bit.
I didn't run at all. I just fucking, I'm being particular about answering the questions truthfully.
I think that B and Scott are clearly not tactical geniuses here, because like if there is a threat, right, and you dump all your bullets into one particular person, what if there were multiple threats? What if you're being surrounded, right? Like, it seems to me that you're like the first target that I see. I've got to empty my clip. I'm just saying, right? You put one.
I appreciate Prime Guys. I appreciate Prime Guys that you understand that responsible gun ownership and concealed carry means that you should have an extra mag with you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Prime, you're super incorrect about it's not John Wick where you count your bullets. That's like, oh, I have to be prepared for multiple threats. That's not a situation where
it's fucking Spy Family over here.
Okay. So I just want to say that I agree, like, philosophically with the concept that if you pull a gun, you should be prepared to use it. However, I don't agree with the concept that if you pull a gun, you have to be 100% sure that you're going to use it and then just start yanking back on the fucking trigger. I'm with Jay Chow here. As a matter of fact, while working as a law enforcement officer, which I understand does change the dynamic because I actually have the authority to detain people and take them into custody and bring them in front of a judge who's going to make a judgment about whether or not, or work with a jury of peers to determine criminal charges and all that kind of shit. Oftentimes, like, a gun is a sufficient deterrent to get people to do what needs to be done. Whether that's fuck off or listen to the commands of a law enforcement officer, most people don't want to find out what it's like to be shot. So my personal advice to civilians who are concealed carrying is, don't pull unless you can use it and you're willing to use it and you're ready to use it. But just because you pull it doesn't mean you have to use it. A perfect example, I think it was during the BLM riots, there was a reporter, I think he actually did get arrested and charged, but it was like New York, so who gives a shit? They're a fucking commie state anyways. But he was being approached by like half a dozen people who were like coming up to him and obviously about to beat his ass and or steal his camera equipment, and he basically pulled a pistol and told them to fuck off. I think that person was well within his rights, and if he mag dumped somebody, the situation would have been worse than what ultimately ended up happening.
What all I'm saying is that if you pull a gun, you should use it. But what you are doing is that you're looking at it. Listen, you're looking at it. I
love how you just repeated what you already just said. It was just the exact opposite of what he said.
Listen.
A philosopher. I'll listen, but I want to quote a philosopher back at you.
But you just made your right. What I am saying, right, is if you are in a situation where you are as a civilian, I think the situation does change when you are a law enforcement officer. And despite my feelings about law enforcement officers, there is a presumed authority, right? I think that situation does change. But as a civilian, if you are pulling a firearm, what I am saying is that you shouldn't pull the firearm unless you need to pull the trigger. That you should not be pulling the firearm as a fucking deterrent, because it might be a deterrent, but it also might be an escalation in the situation where now you do have to kill somebody that you might not have had to have killed. That you pull the firearm, and when that happens, it needs to be the moment where you have no other alternative, and then you start pulling the trigger.
Okay. To quote the great philosopher king Andre 3000, don't pull that thing out unless you plan to bang, and don't bang unless you plan to hit something.
Based.
I concur.
So
I concur.
then Scott.
Did they teach you at the police
That wasn't
academy?
in my philosophy
Big on
class.
So
That's on the wall when you walk in.
that? Yeah.
In between eating crayons.
So Scott, does this situation change if, like, as the person's running away and as the teen is like watching them run away, they trip and they absolutely face plant, and now they're unconscious? Are they no longer justified in shooting?
Or you think they're unconscious?
He could wake up.
Yeah, that's more or less what I'm trying to tease out. Of, like, we don't know. They could be playing possum, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to change my opinion. Like, I'm willing to eat all of these bullets. Like, you
yeah,
can blast some motherfucker. Like he doesn't
and-
know whether or not he's unconscious. And if he does know where he's unconscious, how did he determine that? Well, the only way he determined that is by going up to the body, choosing to do so, right?
Yeah, well,
and likely already disarmed him and has control of the
use-
situation in his opinion.
I'll use naked method lactoids example.
I don't care.
Well, he already answered it, right? He already said.
Yeah. I feel like we've gotten
It's
this.
absurd, but he answered it. Yeah.
B.
If
I think. Oh, there you go.
if someone was sexually assaulted and they never reported it, and then they walked in there in the mall and they see the person that they know for a fact sexually assaulted them walking by them, that victim or survivor has no right to do anything. I don't know why I keep saying that my mic is muted. Are you muting me?
No.
I think there's a noise gate and it takes some time.
Yeah, I think the noise
it's like-
gate
just
might be a little too strong. Like, you
Oh,
might
is
need
it
to
cutting
open
me
your noise
out?
gate up a little bit.
No, we can hear you.
It's
just
not that
it
bad.
takes like a quick
It's not
second.
that bad.
Just go ahead.
Okay. Because if I don't, the only recourse I have is legal at that point in time. An eye for an eye doesn't work in our legal system. So a temporal limit is not one, like, I understand time isn't timey-wimey. I'm not a time lord, and I don't have a TARDIS. So I think temporal time does matter. And I also don't need to be catching strays, pun intended, about whether or not I'm going to empty a mag whenever someone is approaching me. Again, I'm going to do everything I can to survive that situation, whatever that cost is. And you're right. If I'm double tapping zombies and trying to conserve bullets like I'm in The Walking Dead, I will certainly be doing that and making sure that I do a good bullet count. In other scenarios in which I'm utilizing my gun for realsies, I'm going to reserve the right to utilize excessive use of bullets at that point in time. I think it's
Yeah, I don't understand your argument, because it's missing principal differences and talking about situations that we've already gone over and explained. First of all, the sexual assault, right, is not the same. Yeah. The sexual assault's not is not necessarily the same, though it can be, as a credible threat to violence. It depends on what you mean by sexual assault. Because obviously being groped on a subway.
Violent of volatile assaults. There's nothing consent. There's nothing consensual. There's nothing about that.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's fine, right? Like, then you're talking about the same thing. It's a one-to-one thing. It's someone threatening the life of another person. And so I've already,
months ago.
Right. We've already answered that question. I don't know. Maybe you weren't here for it, or you were missing something, right? Like, which is there's a difference in behavior, right? Where we went over that portion. Like I already answered that question, and you're bringing it back. So do you need me to answer for you again?
I don't need you to do anything for me. I'm quite fine, and I'm capable of keeping up with this conversation on my own. Thank you very much.
Well, it seems like you're lagging behind, so I guess I don't know what to tell you.
Okay. Oh my god.
I dismissed what that
She said her
majority
piece.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, this is a debate. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. If someone says something wrong,
No, some
that I've
people
already
need
sat down, I'm
clarification
gonna
or
say it again.
something.
I
Why you
asked if
gotta
she
assume
needed
that
it. She
everything
said
that
she
you gotta
doesn't.
say, everybody understands?
Okay,
What?
so
I asked if she needed it. She said she doesn't. She just
We got
clearly
it.
is lost,
Okay.
but it's cool.
All
Like
right.
you're just an incel, Scott. I appreciate the differentiation between you and Corey now.
Interesting. Okay, I won't press that one further. But so I thought this topic is really interesting, and Bam, our friend over there, who's kind of checked out for a second.
I wasn't. Like I said, I did my little like mini rant on the engagement with like Scott's world, which like every time he explains something about his world, it just sounds like a crappy place to live. Like I don't understand like where like his values map onto like an actual society that anybody would want to.
Now you're doing what you accuse me of doing.
Let's not open
No,
door.
I didn't ask Scott anything.
No.
I didn't need explanation. I gave an opinion.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we'll move that.
Sounds like
along
coke.
here. But I.
Be right back, hitting the baby.
Sure, fair enough. I like this idea of like this idea of imminent threat. I mean, I don't like this idea, but I don't like the way it's been used within our society. That's why I related to the cop situation, because cops, can just be scared of anything, literally anything. A shadow. A literal shadow that is formless to them, but looks like it's moving in an aggressive manner. And I guess I could just empty bullets into that shadow, and I'll figure it out later. So, like, if this segment of our society can do that, like, it just seems to me that like it opens the door for everyone.
May I respond to you? So
Please,
specifically with imminent threat, I'm utilizing it when I'm referring to lay people or citizens, which is a different standard from officers or former police officers or military people with training who are I don't know what sort of basic officers go through, but who are trained to be able to withstand, specifically short out that reptilian brain and make good decisions in the moment. That's why our standard is much higher for officers than it is for civilians.
Is it? But isn't that actually the case? I mean, the situation I'm talking about, like, that's actually real. Like, I'm thinking
I understand that.
Okay,
Thank you.
and so the point is that like there was a guy in his own backyard.
I understand that. Okay.
I forget. I believe this one was talking on himself, and there's been so many instances.
Okay.
I get them mixed up. But I believe this guy was.
I made a point, and if you engage with it, then you're
reason,
bad.
And immediately killed him because they thought it was a weapon, right? And you say that we have higher standards, but these officers get off. They say that they were afraid, right? They were. I believe them. They were afraid. They're terrified little bitches. That's true, right? But it doesn't seem that standard actually exists in real life.
There are lower standards, right? Because I mean, not whether this is right or not, but I understand the intuition that you would think they would have higher standards because of their training and what have you. But legally, a lot of the times we have lower standards because we know that they're on a job where they're going to have to put themselves in danger and exert physical force often. And so we give them more leeway to make decisions with those physical force. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are we talking pragmatically or theoretically in a vacuum? Because pragmatically, I understand that the laws are bent to be able to protect an officer at almost all costs, right? So we're going to look at things and think, well, yeah, but even if they were trained, they were in a really tough situation. Even if this happened, then something else or blah, blah, blah. I understand and I appreciate that. However, in a vacuum, yes, officers certainly have a higher
They have more training for sure.
I'm trying to see, like, I guess lower standard.
Well, how about we just divide the standards? This is what I'm saying. No, this is what I'm saying. Let's divide the standards. There's standards of actions that an individual can take, and then there are standards of how do we judge the actions of individuals. So to cops, we expect them to have a higher standard of engagement, of de-escalation. They have more training. We expect more of them to do something. However, when it comes to the consequences of taking those actions, then we begin to say, okay, well, they're in dangerous situations. This is necessary to their jobs. And so then if things were to happen to them, then we have lower standards, technically lower standards to them than, say, if a layperson or just a regular citizen were to do the same thing.
I don't think it's lower standards. I think that the law is misapplied in those cases in which officers go free.
Well, that can happen, right? Sometimes the lower standards, what happens is you have scenarios like what I think Prime Case was talking about, where it's unfortunately allows for some issues, malpractice, police officers making decisions that most of us would think are not justified or reasonable. But that it is the case that typically
a very wide berth. Like in my experience in working and in questioning officers and my experience in the law, they're giving an exceptionally wide berth. There are officers who have shown up. I had an officer who showed up 3 months post a massive heart surgery and was talking about himself. And he said, I mean, I did just have a heart surgery, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And I thought, are you out of your mind? Like, you are either vulnerable or you're not. You've got to pick one right now, you crazy loon. So I don't disagree with you, but I think if they're going to be deserving of, listen, they have a greater amount of leeway than they deserve and are required to be held to a higher level, a higher standard.
So, okay, so I just want to articulate this real quick because I think what Chow said is just descriptively accurate, where you have a higher training, so you have a higher expectation, but then because the job requires them to interact with these scenarios on the daily, there's a wider berth for mistakes, and oftentimes there's, the adrenaline, and I thought that they were an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. The reason why civilians often get slammed, despite having less training and less responsibility, is because it's actually quite rare as a civilian to interject yourself into a scenario where you're required to use self-defense. And then also, as long as you can articulate imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, you'll typically be okay. Just to revisit my authoritarian centrist policy position, though, I do think that civilians broadly should be educated on these things. One, so they know how to exercise their rights under the law, but then two, they can also know whether or not the public servants that serve them are exercising their authority correctly under the law. So I think a educated population that understood self-defense, it would be a much better population than we have right now.
Do you
Have you
think
ever had a-
counterpoints?
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask one question,
You
then
good.
we'll go to Bam. Yeah. Counterpoints. Then, do you think that if there is a population in this country that typically has antagonistic and dangerous and possibly deadly experiences with law enforcement, then that they should be able to articulate that and say, oh, this cop has harassed me, has beat me up on a regular basis, right? They just shows up sometimes when to fuck with me, and I saw them approaching, and so I
Wait a
shot
minute,
them.
who is that?
Somebody have a smoke alarm going off?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a thing in the background. I can't. Please
Oh,
answer.
it's you. Okay.
Yeah, so should we be educating populations that are perhaps victims of police harassment so they can articulate their own harassment? Yeah, absolutely. But I think you also need to articulate how to create evidence for a case as well. So it's one thing to conceptually understand that a police officer should not be speaking with you every single day if you're a law-abiding citizen, even if you committed crimes in the past. They shouldn't be following you at every single stop sign. They shouldn't be checking your seatbelt at every single intersection. They shouldn't be following you to work, all that kind of stuff. So if there's a member of the community who feels like they're being harassed, they need the ability to understand that that is not normal for law enforcement to single you out as an individual citizen and follow you around until you commit crimes. That's an important part of the education. But documentation is also important. So for instance, if that is a normal traffic stop where cop cars sit there all the time and it just kind of happens that happens to be near your house and more than that one cop has pulled you over because you have been violating the law consistently, you're going to have more in order to show off the harassment. Have a passenger video record that a cop is literally just following you from miles at a time without pulling you over, those kinds of things. And you can demonstrate the pattern through evidence. And then the more you understand, demonstrating patterns through evidence, the better it is. So I think that the answer is yes. but that education might be insufficient because it's not sufficient to just know what needs to happen. You also need to know how to demonstrate that to the justice system itself.
I guess my only pushback is, I mean, I agree, like, broadly with what you said. I think was really good advice. But the idea that it isn't normal, right? Like, I think it's for some neighborhoods, this is normal. This is how they interact with the police. And like, it is accepted by the wider side. This is good policing. To be harassing these people in their neighborhood. Oh, they're looking for drugs. We're looking for drugs, of course, right? So we got to go through their pockets. Go ahead.
What you just said is the exact example of why I would want to educate the public in the first place. So there's people who are quote unquote frequent flyers, people who go to jail all the time. But as a result of that, I think that they've been so abused by the system that they don't even object when their rights are being abused. So one of the things that I saw that was really frustrating to me was a law enforcement officer who allegedly was a good law enforcement officer. But basically he would say like, hey, do you mind if I search your pockets real quick? But before he even got an answer, his hands were already on the person. And it's like, you're playing way fast and loose with the Fourth Amendment. You're violating the spirit of the Fourth Amendment, absolutely. And then just because you don't get an objection in a timely manner, you find something in somebody's pockets that you're able to articulate as a part of that is drugs, and then you're able to make an arrest off of that. That's not good police work. That's not good community work. And I think it destroys trust between the community and law enforcement, where it's like, you're treating me like I am a criminal. I love, I'm not, hold on, let me be careful with my quotes. So
You heard it here first, folks. Breaking news.
Hypothetically, this person is a criminal. They do drugs, they do trespass, they do burglarize, they are vandals, all that kind of stuff. But then it's almost a self-fulfilling cycle, because the second they step out their door in the morning, there's a narco cop sticking their hands in their pockets. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, like, when do I get to become a normal part of the community?
All right. Let's go to Bam.
Yeah, I was just curious. Like, I'm always going to be pro education. I think people knowing more is I'm not against that as a concept, especially when it comes to their rights. But it seems like whenever you get into a real life situation, all of those things that practically should go out the window. Like,
Yes.
I know I have a right to do this. But I feel like even you would say like, hey, shut up, let them do it, and then we'll try to take it to court maybe, and hopefully you can afford it.
Yeah, so there's a saying, it's like, you can't beat the rap, beat the ride. Wait, you can't beat the ride, you can beat the rap. So basically I would say that you don't litigate things on the side of the road. You don't say, hey, motherfucker, I didn't consent to a search. Like, what the fuck? Like, you just jammed your hands in my pockets and I never consented. Let's fist fight about this right now. But what you do say is, if they have body camera, then you say that loud. You say, hey, I didn't consent to a search. You stuck your hands in my pockets before I even had an opportunity to decline. Anything past this, you can go fuck yourself, and I'm going to sue you and ask for your supervisor. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, if you say that on camera, and this, I think body-worn cameras should be 100% mandatory. If you say that on camera, they take you to jail anyways. You talk to your public defender and talk to the state's attorney's office, and you say, hey, where's the body cam? I objected to being searched. And if they say, oh yeah, they lost the body camera footage, boom, that shit's getting fucking dismissed. And then on top of that, if there's a pattern of that, like if you educate the community to do those kinds of things, that's where you start opening up the community to lawsuits, and those cops are going to start getting fired, because it's going to be more of a public risk to have cops who are constantly violating the law, who are violating the Fourth Amendment, who get the police department into lawsuits. Then it is going to be worth it to keep them to up the arrest statistics. But this has to be like a community-based effort.
For sure. I was just speaking to the idea of I don't know. We all see
beat the ride.
We always see the sovereign citizens, like the dudes on the side of the road that like every time they get pulled over, like oh boy, like they get
traveling
excited.
officer.
I know my
Like
rights.
200 of them. But real quick point of clarification. Point of clarification. This is just super important, super quick. Don't tell cops fuck you or fuck off. That's a good way to get smacked in the fucking head and get the shit kicked out of you. Just say, I didn't consent to this, and any orders I follow from here on out, I feel are done under duress. And
Yep.
just leave it at that.
From a non-legal
More neutral. yeah.
advisor in a legal expert capacity, everything I've ever told my clients is nobody talks and everybody walks. So other than asserting your right to Fifth Amendment protection,
Yeah, and then
your
you shut
public
up after
defender-
that. Yeah.
Could you let me finish? Thank you. That's all you need to state at that point in time. So again, and because then I can do everything else that I need to do in order to get you out of that. If they continue still talking to you, I can work with that. I don't even want you mumbling a God bless America to yourself or a prayer. Don't say anything until I'm with you in your cell. Nobody talks and everybody walks. But having been through a really traumatic experience myself recently, and again, I pride myself on being somebody who could be deeply prepared to survive any atrocious situation because I'm terrified of those things. The amount of shock one goes through and getting dumbstruck is very real. So whenever we were, this is never mind. That's such a sidebar. That's not on topic. We can move on. My mistake.
No, it was kind of
Well,
what Bam was
I-
saying. That makes sense. Bam was, I think, pointing to that, and that in these situations where you have these authoritative figures and people, especially if they haven't been in these situations, it can be very jarring, and that shock can lead you to not have the ability or wherewithal to navigate the situation as you were educated to. So, like, it can be tough, to.
Yep.
You know,
I wouldn't even necessarily saying that far.
I
Oh,
want
Mike,
I
you
actually
go. Make
do
your
want
point,
to
Ron.
challenge Bam and B a little bit on this, and I see you there, Connor. That like, so I have been nodding my head along when they talk about like the adrenaline situation and like that people's decision making abilities are diminished. But people's decision making abilities are diminished in all kinds of ways, and we don't let them off. Like it seems like the standard for the law, right? If we're talking about the law right now, it should be of a competent person making these decisions. Because, like, look, when I get turned on, I've got less blood in my head, right? And I make worse decisions. Like, it simply is the case, right? Like my decision making capacity is diminished when I am very much aroused. But like, I'm not. I don't think maybe my friend
Wild
Lactoid is
statement to make.
maybe my friend Lactoid is that good of a lawyer, but I don't think he could get me off. If,
Well, what do you-
No,
I can get you
no,
up. No, don't worry about that.
I believe
I can
in
be-
Lactoid.
why
I
is this
believe in
relevant?
I can
Lactoid.
get you
Lactoid's
up.
got a lot of
Don't
people
worry
off
about
prime.
that.
You're
I
good.
can be
He's a
I
professional.
can be the legal help of your dreams. Don't worry.
Okay, but yeah, so like, but people have diminished capacity all the time, and we kind of just like, well, that's just too bad, right? Like,
Yeah.
should it actually be
No.
that an excuse?
That wasn't my
I'm not-
argument.
I apologize.
No, I
Go
don't
for
think
it.
that's what Bam was saying.
I was making the exact opposite argument. I was saying that I was saying to counterpoint. He was arguing like like people just need to know their rights and like and when they do that they'll like hold the people accountable. I was just saying that like practically like you could teach all those lessons like this is what's technically supposed to happen. But like I don't know, just growing up like that, my explanation to the cop like whenever I got pulled over wasn't like here's your amendments and here's your rights. It's shut the f up. You're like
sure.
whatever happens.
Sometimes
like,
that is a better tactic.
No, but
Nobody talks and
but I
everybody
think-
walks.
but I think so. I'm perfectly fine with that. And then on top of that, I think there's different kinds of education that you can have with different communities and all that kind of stuff. My thing though is I think the way that it should be, and then cops should be held to that standard as well. It's not always going to work out right, but this is why universal body cams is important. And I also think that it can't just be this is the way that it's going to happen, because people get like bad information all the time. As an example, we had a domestic violence situation where we get like the description of a subject, and it's black male, no shirt, gray gym shorts, and then like small twists in his hair. That's a description of a young black gentleman. Well, let's face it, a lot of young black gentlemen look like that. So it's domestic violence. The dude ran away. I'm a block and a half over, and it's a bunch of teenagers. There's one nice teenager who fits the description, literally. Gray shorts, no t-shirt, black twist in his hair. And then there's 3 other young men who are talking over me and telling him that he doesn't need to identify himself to me. And I basically have to like be super patient, wait for them to stop yelling over me basically and say, hey, that's actually bad information. I would appreciate it if y'all stopped. you fit the description of the person that we're looking for, and I need your ID in order to basically call it in to see if you're the person that we're looking for. And basically the guy's like, okay, well, what was the description? And I was like, how do I do this without being racist? And so you got to understand, that's the kind of fractious community relationship that I think could be solved by the public knowing when they need to identify themselves, and law enforcement knowing the limits of their power, and then both of us kind of reinforcing that through body cams, through state's attorney's office, through civil suits, through all that kind of stuff. And right now, I think we have cops and state's attorneys, God bless their hard work, but I think they take advantage of the public's ignorance. And then I think we have members of the public who are wildly ignorant of the system and think that they can get something over on the system, and they fucking can't. So we kind of have the worst of all worlds.
What would you do if he didn't have his wallet in that situation?
Then I would say, hey, we're gonna hang out. Do you know your social? All that kind of stuff. And most people are gonna know their social. And most cops have a system, at least in the state of Florida. It's called David. It's like the Department of Vehicle Identification Information or something like that. I can pull up somebody's social. So I would just have him stand with a law enforcement officer while I went and checked my computer, and I would check my computer, and then I would call in his information to dispatch. And by the way, we have the name of the domestic violence suspect. So since it wasn't the same name, I wasn't going to detain him just for looking like the guy I was looking for. It was to be a process of elimination.
And you
What's
were
that?
the exception and not the rule. That you were potentially the exception and not the rule. And how
For law
seriously you took
enforcement?
your job. Yes.
Yeah, so there's all different kinds of cops. I think 30% of cops are the coolest people I've ever met who are absolute heroes. I think 30 of them are normies who fuck up, and I think 30 of them are shitbags, which I think is that's for most jobs. But I think maybe I was, because
Did you just pull a nerdy Asian math joke?
Exceptional. Yeah, I did. I want to know what's the other 10%.
So maybe
He messed up on his math.
Don't you mean 33.333 repeating counterpoints?
Yes. So the 10%.
Of course, Leroy
The
Jenkins.
other 10% of the women.
There were women cops, and they were really good at what they did because they were able to talk people down through emotional intelligence. But then also with me, I would like to say I was a hippie cop. So I was a stoner in high school. I did the military first, so I did a lot of really intense shit before I did law enforcement. So I didn't at least early in my career, I didn't let intense situations try to fuck me over and make me treat people like shit just because we're in an intense situation. But there was only 2 of us on the force, and there was 20 cops on the road. So there were only 2. There was 2 hippie cops out of 20 cops on the road, which actually works out to 10%. So that works.
All right, so we'll
Damn, there you
continue
go.
on to our next